next presenters are April Melton and Monica Talcott. They'll be presenting on volunteerism in the aging population and mentored by Professor Laura Ting from the Department of Social Work.
Yeah, that's fine. I know. You don't have much of a choice.
Good morning. Our study was on volunteering in the aging population. My name is Monica Talcott.
And I'm April Melton.
The first thing we want to do is thank the URA for funding our research and also thank our participants, as well as thanks to Dr. Laura Ting for mentoring us. Currently, 12.4% of the population are over 65, but the projection for 2050 is that will increase 20%. Within this 12.4%, 41.2% are male and the other 58.8% are female. The aging population is also growing much more diverse. As expected, within this population, religious affiliation is predominantly Christian, like the rest of the United States. More non-Hispanic whites graduated high school, and that was 76%, followed by Asians, blacks, and Hispanics at 36%. Within our literature review, for volunteers that are over 65, we found volunteering for organizations mostly, and not including informal volunteering in the research. Also, more women volunteer across all age groups, not just the over 65 age group. And also, people with a bachelor's degree or higher were more likely to volunteer. Some volunteers over 65 only volunteer because they're asked to, according to one of the researchers that we found. Another research study said volunteering is important in every age group, but particularly with the aging population, because it's beneficial to a person's mental and also physical health due to the positive social interaction, mental engagement, and physical activity associated with volunteering. In addition, volunteering provides important advantages to the economy in terms of reduced spending on health care and decreased allocation of tax dollars to staff government organizations such as museums and also public historic buildings. Private nonprofit social welfare agencies also increasingly rely on volunteers due to budget cuts and lack of funding. In looking at past research, we did not find any qualitative studies looking at the motivation behind volunteering in the over 65 population within the U.S.
Because of this lack of qualitative studies, we were interested in looking at the reasons the aging population volunteers, as well as the reasons why the aging population does not volunteer. We were also looked at what the concept of volunteering meant to the aging population. Our study was a qualitative study that looked at the life experiences of the aging population, specifically over the ages of 65. And our research consisted of a purposeful sample of 40 participants. This means that we intentionally interviewed people from different economic backgrounds, races, and ethnicities. And some examples of where we recruited some of our participants were senior centers, assisted living facilities, and by referrals, and also by some health clubs. Our study is IRB approved, and all of our participants are voluntary. The interviews are semi-structured. We asked all of our participants background information questions, and then also specific questions depending on their volunteer status. The average length of our interviews was about 40 minutes, and we found that many of our interviews brought up similar themes. We analyzed the data by looking through the transcribed interviews, and we found similar themes and then categorized the data by line coding.
The mean age of our study was 75.2. 42% were male and 57.5 were female. As far as race, most were Caucasian, 30 of them were Caucasian, and then 3 were African American, 2 Latino, 3 were Asian, and 2 were mixed race. And then much like the US population, most were Christian. It was also a very highly educated group, with 59% being college graduates or higher. And that probably had to do with the area. Relationship status, 40% were actually widowed and 32.5 were still married. 17.5 were divorced, and then 10% were never married. And 2.61 was the average, or the mean age for the mean number of children that people had, and the age ranges, or I'm sorry, the number of children were between 0 and 9 children for our participants. And then 16.7 never had children at all. Economic status, we measured that by proxy measures because it was very personal. And for this we used housing as well as other information that we gathered during our interviews. Most of our participants were upper middle class, so they lived in their own home or in a senior community. And for this study, we actually allowed the participants to determine their own volunteer status. So 60% of them saw themselves as volunteers and 40% did not. And then for a measure of independence, we actually used driving. And 2/3 of our participants still drove, 27% no longer drove, and then a small percentage had never learned how to drive.
When we asked our participants what their definition of a volunteer was and what volunteering means to them, most of the data centered around the concept of helping others. And some quotes that reflect this theme are, one participant stated, "Someone who helps out when needed and goes the extra mile." Another participant said, "Someone who gives of themselves with their time, their talent, and some of their treasure. Someone who feels committed to other people and other projects that will benefit other people." And the third quote does not demonstrate a major theme within our data. This person said that they feel that a volunteer is someone who has disposable time and income.
That was our outlier.
Again, we looked at the reasons why the aging population volunteer, and like I said before, we categorized them into central themes. We found 4 central themes. The first being choices and freedom to choose with fun. Social connections, which included boredom, keeping busy, distraction, and family. Personally rewarding, and obligation. And I have a few quotes from each of these themes from our participants. For choices, the first participant stated that career is something whether you like it or not. For volunteering, you can use your talent and pick what you want to do. Another participant stated, "I think that volunteering is an individual choice that broadens our horizons, and you are not focused so much on yourself, and you are able to share your abilities and talents with other people. I don't know what the world would be like if we didn't have people to volunteer." In socialization, one of the participants stated, "I like people and I don't like isolation. And physically I'm alone, but I am not a loner. My life feels more productive and rewarding when I am helping other people." For boredom and keeping busy, "I am dwelling on all of these other things and not my health. I like to work, I like to always keep busy. I can get restless if I sit around too much." Another quote is, "I don't know, it keeps me busy, it keeps me active, it keeps me from chasing pretty ladies like you. It's a different satisfaction every place I go." For family, a participant stated, My daughter is into a lot of different activities in the church, so she takes me to volunteer at the soup kitchen." So I don't think she was forced, but I think she was coerced. Personally rewarding. "I think that when you volunteer, you get more out of it than what you put into it." And for obligation, "There were so many lunches to fix, so I offered to help, and I am still doing it, and everybody else has quit."
There were also many reasons why this population chose not to volunteer. One reason was health, and I have a few quotes for each. One participant said, "No, because There ain't too many things that I can do. I think about it. I mean, I can't even help somebody carry a bag or something. Another person said, I quit volunteering because I had 5 bypasses. One doctor said I may have had a mini stroke because I've had trouble walking after that. Another theme was family responsibility. I have a husband who needs me, and sometimes he needs to go to the doctor, and I left him home today. He has many problems. If I didn't have to be with him so much, I could volunteer 7 days a week. And if he's okay, I go, and if he's not okay, I take care of him first. Lack of self-confidence was another theme that we found, and one of our participants said, I just don't have the ability. Other barriers included transportation. One of my participants said, Montgomery County gives me a voucher for the taxi. From here to my house, it would be $14. I love this place. If I could come here every day, I would, but they only give me enough taxi money to come twice a week. Some people just wanted to take time for themselves, or needed time for themselves, and I have a couple quotes for that. I'm taking time for myself. Being new to this vicinity, I don't know of too many things in the area. And someone else said, I certainly don't have the inclination to volunteer. At maybe one time I did, but now I don't have the inclination to do that. Now I've got the feeling, I leave you alone and you leave me alone, I won't bother you either. For organizational structure, they needed help at the police station, so I went down there for a few years. Then my supervisor left, so for several weeks I went back and things that needed to happen weren't happening, and they were wanting me to do things that paid employees were doing. And some had more than one reason as well. We did have limitations and strengths with our study. Some of the limitations included generalizability. Most of our participants were from Montgomery County, so the data may not reflect the entire U.S. population. As you know, Montgomery County is a very educated area. It's also a very wealthy area. It's also very racially and ethnically diverse. Also, there's a lot of transportation in Montgomery County. You can get to places by bus, you can get to them by taxi, by metro. So things are easily accessible, and there are probably more volunteer opportunities in that area. Social desirability may have been a limitation because people want to feel as though they look good to other people. Recall bias may have been another one. We asked participants about memory from childhood, and sometimes when too much time has gone by, memories may not be accurate. There were many different definitions of volunteering. We also had strengths. Because it was qualitative, we were able to have very in-depth interviews with our participants and gather rich data from them. 40 participants is also very large for a qualitative study. We saw the diversity in this study as a strength as well, because it allowed us to see motivations in many different people. And we actually found very similar results across the board.
For our discussion, unlike some previous studies, our results did not indicate that most people felt obligated to volunteer. And we found that people volunteered for various reasons, such as the health, socialization, and personal enrichment. And as expected, people did not volunteer because of the health and structural barriers. Also, we found that a lack of agency organization also discouraged volunteering.
We did find 3 implications for future research, practice, and policy. For future research, we would recommend looking at other age groups doing qualitative studies, looking at younger generations' ideas of volunteering, and look at more rural populations. Longitudinal studies are also recommended, looking at people across the lifetime to see if people that volunteer stay healthier and live longer. Also research on informal volunteering, since many of our participants volunteered within their community, but not necessarily with a structured organization. And for practice, for those who work with the elderly, as well as for the people themselves, it's important to know that volunteering seems to have positive effects. Specifically for caregivers, the information on structural barriers preventing volunteering could help them to figure out ways to help people overcome those barriers, such as transportation. And for policy, agencies could use this information to help recruit volunteers as well as retain them by knowing it's important to appreciate people day to day. And also, because most do not volunteer for the dinners or for award banquets or for any other recognition. Organizations should also be aware people volunteering want training and supervision in their positions so they know why they're there and they feel productive. And also, if organizations are not able to spend the money on training and supervision, this not only has implications for agencies as far as whether volunteers stay or not, it also has implications for the aging with mental and physical health implications. Because if agencies are no longer able to take volunteers because of lack of funding, then this could have effect on the mental and physical health of people, since it has been shown that it helps people.
Thank you.
And these are our references.
We have time for one question.
I was wondering how you felt about the Obama's plans, because it's not really specifically aimed at old people, or older people. It's actually aimed at younger people. But how do you feel about Barack Obama's plans to triple the size of the AmeriCorps, which is the agency for volunteering?
I think it's great. I mean, I think that volunteering across ages is very important. It not only helps you to feel productive and feel like you're a part of a community and part of the population, but it's also very educational.
Well, a quick follow-up. Did you find in your study that people that volunteered much when they were of an older age volunteered when they were young as well?
We found, I know that for the 20 people that I interviewed, a majority of them had volunteered throughout their life.
Yes.
But that didn't necessarily mean that their families did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. A few participants that I had interviewed, one in particular, he's been volunteering for 20 years, and he's close to 70, and so he still works full time. So we found that even if they do work currently, some have volunteered in the past for many years.
Thank you.